Okay, today is March 24th, 2025. We have Marianne Touchie as our guest speaker for our Students Club. I would take this opportunity to introduce Marianne tonight for the audience based on her profile at the University of Toronto's website. Marianne Touchie joined the University of Toronto as an assistant professor in July 2016 and received the tenure in 2022. She's jointly appointed in the Department of the Civil and Mineral Engineering and Mechanical and Industrial Engineering. She completed her BASc in 2009 and PhD in 2014 in the Department of Civil Engineering at the University of Toronto. Upon completion of her PhD, Marianne became the Building Research Manager at the University of Toronto's Atmospheric Fund and was also postdoctoral fellow at the University of Toronto. Dr. Touchie's research focuses on improving the energy performance and indoor environmental quality of existing buildings to make them more comfortable, healthy, and sustainable throughout the comprehensive retrofit. This work includes the monitoring and characterizing building energy performance, environmental parameters, and occupant perceptions to determine the influence of potential retrofit approaches, both active and passive. Much of her research has been in the multi-unit residential sector and particularly social housing buildings. Dr. Touchie is also the president and co-president of the Building Science Specialist Board of Canada and former chair for the ASHRAE Technical Committee 2.1 Physiology and Human Environment. She teaches courses in building science, HVAC fundamentals, and building performance assessment. Thank you very much for being here tonight, Dr. Touchie. This is an honor for our students to having you at Algonquin College in person and the other people here in online. We are going to record the session for the future reference.
Well, thank you so much, Betty, for the invitation.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation.
I really appreciate it. And I'll invite, it's great to see everyone in the classroom. And if you feel comfortable, please feel free to turn on your camera. It's always great to see people's faces, but if not, that's totally okay as well. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I don't use Zoom very often, so let's see how this goes. Okay, does that work?
It's coming. Yes, now it's working.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so hi there, everyone. So Mehdi, thanks again for the introduction. I really appreciate it. So I wear lots and lots of different hats, but I'm here today to talk to you about the Building Science Specialist designation and its relationship to various organizations in Ontario and more broadly in Canada. So I'll talk a little bit about the history of the program, but I think it's just important to understand the two main organizations that are involved in this work. So the BSAO, which may be a new acronym to people, it used to be formerly known as the Ontario Building Envelope Council, is an Ontario organization that really focuses on promoting building science education. So I'm not sure if there maybe some hands online or in the air if anyone is a member of the BSAO. But basically the work that they do is really important, bringing, doing dinner meetings and seminars and things, bringing sort of the latest and greatest in building science technology and knowledge to their members. The original designation where the BSS stemmed from actually used to be run by the Ontario Building Envelope Council. But we've now created a new organization, which is called the Building Science Specialist Board of Canada. So this is a national designation that promotes the BSS designation and basically looks after this designation in that they run the series of professional exams, which I'll talk a little bit more about. They run the continuing education requirements and basically manage those memberships for building science specialist holders across the country. So we'll just start with a little bit. This might be a new term to you. So what is a BSS? I've mentioned it a couple of times, but the BSS is basically a building science specialist. This is an industry designation that recognizes two things. So one is that you have a specialized education in building science, but you also have a certain level of practical experience in this area. So the whole intention behind this designation was to provide members of industry, designers, contractors, developers, owners, with the confidence that one who holds a BSS has met this educational and practical experience bar as it relates to building science. So a BSS holder needs to complete a series of exams to demonstrate that minimum education requirement. And they also have to stay up to date on, we do have an annual continuing education requirement to make sure that you're staying up to date with all of the latest and greatest knowledge in the area of building science. It's a really important designation because, as you might recognize, when you look at programs across the country, not a lot of programs actually have a dedicated building science series of courses. And so we kind of take for granted that somebody maybe with a mechanical engineering background or a civil engineering background might know building science. Well, that's not the case because there are a lot of programs where building science is not part of a lot of programs. So the BSS is I think a really important designation because it provides that assurance, even from people that have come from programs that didn't include building science. And I'll talk about some of the pathways which you can get this education. It basically ensures that these people have met that minimum education requirement. So the BSS has a long history. I've been involved for a good chunk of this history. Originally, where this all started was actually the School of Continuing Studies at the University of Toronto. So there were a series of courses designed for professionals that focused on things like building science fundamentals, building enclosure design, building science materials, and heating, ventilating, and air conditioning courses. The problem with this arrangement is that they were only in-person courses that were delivered at the University of Toronto. So when we think about really wanting to have a building science designation that is recognized across the country, we're only able to access a very, very small proportion of the population. And it's fundamentally not really fair if this designation is only available to people who can travel to downtown Toronto. So the first step that we took to kind of open up that accessibility was that the courses were no longer a requirement. Instead, we replaced those courses with a number of exams, which I'll go into in a little bit more detail. And so now you were able to take those exams anywhere in Ontario. Then the next step was we moved this organization from within the Ontario Building Envelope Council to this new national organization called the BSSB, the Building Science Specialist Board. And so that really allowed us to now open up the exams to anywhere in Canada. So we're actually in the process. So it's a bit of a chicken and the egg situation because we have these exams now, but not necessarily everyone has access to building science education, which was the point that I made before. So if you're coming from a building science program, chances are you can probably go ahead and write some of these exams without much preparation. But what we're working on now, the BSAO and the BSSB together, are working on developing educational materials, which will come online over the next few years that will support people in preparing for these exams. So the accessibility piece is there from the perspective of the exams, and we're working on providing greater accessibility to educational materials to support folks. But in the meantime, on the website, there is a list of institutions across the country that have courses that we think are appropriate in terms of preparing for those professional exams. Let me just see if there's anything I'm missing kind of on the history side of things. I think those are really the main changes. A lot's changed in the last couple of years, but I think it's really exciting. So in terms of, what does a BSS mean for your job prospects? How is this going to maybe help you get a job, help you maybe shift your career directions a little bit. So we've spoken with people that have hired BSSs, and it's really an indication of a deeper interest in building science, a curiosity to learn more because of the ongoing educational requirement. And it's really, people see it as a commitment to oneself too, and their level of education in this space. So the other nice thing about the BSS is it does indicate some minimum level of practical experience. So that is also helpful for people who are looking to hire somebody in this field. So it's just it's a way of differentiating yourself from the competition and kind of standing out amongst the crowd as somebody who has really dedicated a lot of time and effort to gaining education and experience in the area of building science. So what does the actual process look like? There are a couple of different steps. So first, you need to be part of an existing envelope council in Canada. So there are a number of different ones across the different provinces. BSAO is the one in Ontario, but they are located further, are BECs as we call them, in many provinces across Ontario and across Canada, sorry. You also need to have completed the prerequisite educational requirements. So these can be one of a few different paths. So you can either have an engineering or architectural undergraduate or graduate degree, or you can have an engineering or architectural diploma from a recognized college or a polytechnical institute. If you have an undergraduate or graduate degree in engineering from a university, you're required to have at least 2,000 hours of practical experience that's directly related to the practice of building science. And if you're coming from a recognized college or polytechnical institute, that requirement is a 5,000-hour practical experience requirement. Now, through your application process, you're going to be documenting what that experience looks like. So just as, if you're applying for a PEng, you'd want to be keeping track of that relevant experience. It's really important if you are considering applying for the BSS that you're maintaining a really good record of who you've worked with, what was the nature of your involvement in the project, and how it relates to building science. It will just make the process a lot easier a little further down the road. So that's the educational and the practical experience side of things. But then there are the exams. So we have a series of 4 professional exams. Each one is offered once a year. So again, if this is something that you're thinking about doing, it's definitely worth going on the website, looking at when the exams are scheduled, and just making sure that you're prepared for them. So it's not something you can just sign up for and get done quickly. It does require some planning. So the 4 exams are the building science theory exams. So this goes into the basics of heat, moisture, and air transfer, solar radiation, a little bit about the basics of enclosure design. There's a building envelope systems course, which goes into a lot more detail on different systems and assembly types. There's a building science materials exam. So that one's kind of self-explanatory, but understanding how different materials contribute to serving different functions within an enclosure. And then there's the mechanical systems exam. And you might think, well, why do we have an exam like that in a program like this? But for those who practiced in this area, know that decisions you make about the enclosure have a big impact on the mechanical system and vice versa. So it's really important to have an understanding, a basic understanding of both of those fields in order to design a building that's performing well. So that course goes into sort of basic psychrometrics, a little bit advanced beyond the building science theory course, looking at different heating, cooling, humidification, dehumidification processes, and the equipment that we use to support those functions. Just a note about the order in which this can happen. So you can do these things concurrently. You can be working and gaining your practical experience while you're working on your exams. You can work on your exams while you're at school. It's really quite flexible. It's more at the very end, you need to tick all of these boxes, but the order in which you do it is completely up to you. Okay, so in terms of candidates, like who would be a strong candidate to apply for the building science specialist designation? So it would just be a little bit easier if you already have some of these educational pathways sort of in your whatever program you're working on. So if you you're taking a building science course as part of your program or an HVAC course, that'll kind of give you a leg up in the preparation because you don't have to do as much self-study. It's also really, really important, obviously, to have the relevant work experience. So if this is something that you want to embark on, you want to make sure that you have a pathway to getting that relevant experience, because that's going to be a big part of a successful application. But in terms of, when the best time to do this, I think that's really up to you. If you're coming right out of a program where you have had some of these courses, it might be a good idea to get those exams done while the material is fresh. But if, you're kind of more of a mid-career person and you're deciding on maybe a bit of a shift in direction, this is just something that you can work away over a year or a couple of years to get all of those requirements fulfilled. That kind of actually leads nicely into the next question. So how long does it actually take to get a BSS designation? That's really up to you. Really, the shortest period of time in which you could complete this is about a year, just because of the nature of how the exams are scheduled. But you can certainly take longer to do that. And I think a few years is probably a more realistic estimate, particularly depending on the practical experience requirements that you have, depending on where you're coming from. So another big question, well, how much does it cost to get the designation? So the main costs are really associated with the exam administration. So we have new exams that are created every year and marked by academics in this area. So they teach courses like this. They're very familiar with this material. So we have a couple of different instructors who run the building science theory course, the building envelope systems course, and then the materials and mechanical systems. The building science theory and building envelope systems courses are slightly longer exams. So there is, as compared to the materials and the mechanical systems exam. So you can actually write the latter two, the materials and mechanical systems, together if you wish, or you can write them separately if you prefer to space that out a little bit. So I think, that's about all I had just in terms of an overview of this program, but I'd love to answer your questions and just see what you'd like to learn more about this designation. I'll just stop sharing so I can see everybody's faces.
Okay, thank you very much, Marianne, for this comprehensive information and presentation. I know some students are in the classroom and may have some questions. Among the audience, if you people have any questions, you can basically feel free to unmute and start asking your questions. It would be great to have a couple of faculties here among us tonight. I would leave it for the others. I have myself a few questions, but I would reserve it for in the end. Greg is here, Mr. Lees, Russell Richmond is here. Very nice to meet everyone online. Greg, I see you are on mute. If you have any questions, go right ahead.
Yes, hi, good day. There is a building science degree program at Algonquin, right?
True, yes.
So would the students that graduate from that, like have they been tutored or mentored on this association?
This is a very good question. From the beginning, when I joined Algonquin College, I tried to make the connection between the organization and our degree program in a school. There's a lot of synergies between these two organizations, and I would basically keep advocating for BSS, and I would basically love to have them more on board. It takes some time, but yes, they've been introduced to it. I jumped into it because it was questioned specifically regarding the Algonquin College, and I was basically having a little bit of a background on that with the program coordinator and all the faculties. We are sitting in the same area, but we are hoping to pick up more, and the program is taking more students as far as I see the registrations in the past few years, and hopefully we can get more involvement between Algonquin College and BSS designations, BSO. Thank you for the
I'll maybe
question.
just add one point that I was thinking about, Midi, as you were talking about that. So on the website, for each of the exams is a series of learning objectives. So they're a great way to self-check whether or not you feel ready to write the exams, just so it's not a surprise. The exam material is based on a subset of those learning outcomes. So in terms of checking to see whether, graduates of the program are prepared to write the exams, that might be a good thing to encourage some of the students to do, just to take a look at those resources.
Perfect. This is because it's very close to my question. I'm going to open the question. I know Janice has questions also. She was waving to me during the conversation, but where the students would be able to find the list of the reading materials.
That's a great question. I'm just going to see if I can grab the link from the website, and I'll drop it in the chat.
Because most of the time, the internationally trained architects or engineers and coming to Canada, they're asking for the materials, which materials we should learn. And not very many people are aware of the importance of the building science. Our students are drawing it in their drawings, the section detail and the plan detail and so on. But when it comes to the reading materials and the study materials, the link is provided here, I think, in the chat box.
So I'm going to drop 2 into the chat. Okay. And then I might just pop over. I'll share my screen again, and I can pop over to the website and show you.
By all means, yes.
One moment. Okay, let me just see if I can share my screen again. Okay, so this is what the, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. So this is what the web page looks like. So there's some basic information about the Building Science Specialist Board and basically all of the things that we just talked about in this presentation. There's a tab where you can begin filling out your application. But the BSS exam tab has a lot of neat information. So there's the application form, but then we've got all of the learning objectives for the various exams. So if you were to click on one of these, you would come to a document that is split up into different subject sections. And so you want to make sure that you're basically able to address all of these, or you're able to answer questions about all of these various things. Some of them, such as building science theory, have resources. This is actually a resource that I created with Professor Kim Presnell a number of years ago. And this basically takes our entire undergraduate building science fundamentals course, and it's over a series of over 100 videos that are freely available that can be used to prepare you for the exam. So I alluded to the fact that we're in partnership with the BSAO. The BSSB is in the process of creating more of these educational materials. But that's kind of what I meant by the chicken and the egg problem. We're trying to provide these exams to maximize accessibility to the program. But now we have to follow through with those educational materials, because at this point, you would be best served by making sure that you're taking a course in one of these areas. And I'll just flip over to this other resource here. So we've gone through all of the programs across the country and identified which courses would be reasonable preparation for the various exams. So this is what we can offer at this stage, but know that we are working on additional material. And there is a little bit of reference material here at the bottom of this page as well. So I would recommend doing a thorough investigation of the BSS exam tab as you're preparing or as you're considering taking these exams.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the answer. Janice, floor is yours if you have any questions. I saw your hands were up.
Oh, you're on mute, Janice.
I was just waving, sorry. I was waving to those in the classroom. No, I just wonder, do we have any building science students on the Zoom right now?
I sent the invitation to their chair for the program and the coordinator. I'm not sure, because there are not too many of those students. Basically, they have the registrations is less than 15, as far as I heard this semester. This is becoming a good program, and a couple of our students from architecture, they lead it to using the bridging program to that program. It's still new, it's still green, but Algonquin College has a keen intent to basically push for that program, and we are promoting that among our students and the civil students if they like to continue on the building science degree.
Well, it'd be good if others could take courses. I don't know if that's possible, but if you don't have to necessarily be part of the program, but you could just take maybe off, like if they're offered one at a time or whatever. I didn't realize there were so few. I've had 4 or 5 of my students complete the building science program. Yeah. And then 3 of them go on to do masters in architecture Carleton afterwards. So that's been a while. I'm just thinking of like someone I know who got his Eng in mechanical engineering, but if this was another path he wanted to, continue on, would he be able to take a couple of courses at Algonquin without taking the whole program, the whole degree?
That is a very good, yeah, that's a very good question, and we should ask that from the chair for the program if they are open to provide some elective courses for the people who are interested in this area.
Well, and especially if there's only 15 enrolled, I had no idea it was that small. Presumably class sizes are small too. Maybe they can handle an extra body or 2 for certain classes. Just.
That's a very good
thinking
question.
Outside the box. Yeah,
I should ask that question.
No, I was wondering just if anyone was here, just because I can see a couple of faces in the classroom, but I didn't know if there were more off to the side that I couldn't see, and it was actually quite crowded. I find, unfortunately, people don't always know about some of these things, and we don't get as many people as we would like to.
For sure.
Anyway, that's just what I was wondering about. There's a chat I noticed too.
Trying to do a little more promotion. We have a little slide now that we send around to all of our academic partners, usually in September, to try to get students aware that this program exists and where to find more information. One other note, U of T is just piloting, or our department is just piloting a new initiative where we have a handful of seats available for people in industry to just join a course. So rather than having to sign up for an entire degree. So Janice, just as you were suggesting, it's officially audited. It's through the audit program. But I'm actually doing the first pilot course with this, but I'm encouraging the auditors to actually engage with all of the assessments. So actually do the projects and actually do the assignments, because really that's how you get the most out of this, I think, as we all know.
Very good.
But that could be something you consider at Algonquin, just to introduce those extra seats.
Yeah, I took a note for that. So hopefully we can do that. I'm wondering, Jamie, if anybody's in the audience in the classroom has any questions, please feel free to bring out those questions.
Yeah, we got a few questions here.
Okay.
I'll pass it to anybody in the class.
I'll start. Thank you, Dr. Touchie, first of all, a very informative session. I just had a couple of questions regarding, I think you had mentioned that your workplace, you have to be in a relevant field of work in order to give these exams and be part of the qualification process. I was just wondering if you could kind of maybe elaborate more on what would count as relevant work experience, because I think especially in our program, we get people working as designers, and then some people will end up on site, and how would we narrow it down for something that would boil down to be relevant to building science? And as a follow-up question is, I know some workplaces, they will actually reimburse you for qualifications like, for example, your gold seal after you pass the exam. I wanted to know if the BSS had some sort of connection like that, or would that depend on workplaces?
Yeah, let me answer your second question first. I think that is very much dependent on where you work, but I know that a lot of workplaces are supportive of getting professional designations. And so it would be a matter of having a conversation with your supervisor on if there are existing programs to support kind of offsetting some of the financial burden of undertaking something like this. And then for your first question, it would really be quite a range. I mean, we recognize that, some people are sort of working more on the forensic side of things, going to figure out what's happening on site. developing a mitigation plan for a particular problem that you see. Some people are working on the design side, and all of that experience is relevant so long as it is closely tied to the principles of building science. So it's fairly flexible in that regard. We recognize that, yeah, there are a lot of different roles that you can hold in this discipline.
Okay, thank you so much. Is that any more questions from the classroom? Ejaz, Jamie? Okay, if not, among the online audience, is that anybody have any questions?
Yeah, sorry, I was having a bit of technical difficulties here. I guess I kind of had a similar question to Hamna, which is, what do like entry level jobs to go on a path to building science? What kind of entry level jobs? What do they look like? Like, some of us will be just graduating the architectural technician program. Is that enough to kind of start our path on the way, or would more schooling involved?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I might, Russ, not to put you on the spot, but if you have any comments about this, you might have some other thoughts on I can speak from my own experience and what my students have done. Often you're sort of entry-level positions, you're starting out going to site and usually going with somebody more experienced and going to assess whether something is being constructed according to the design, or going to evaluate a particular problem, doing testing, doing measurements, things like that, writing up site reports. Other jobs that I've held have been more sort of office-based, where you're doing design work. So it really varies. But Russ, did you want to? Sorry to put you on the spot, but
no, not at all. Hey, I'm Russ. Surprise! I'm the president of BSS now.
Marianne was for
a
in my
while.
bio. I'm like, I'm not president anymore. Russ is the president.
It's all good. We're friends.
Thank you very much, Russ, for coming tonight.
Oh no, I figured I'd pop in, and
Thank
apparently
you.
I can be useful. So, yeah, to build on that, I don't want to sit here and say you need more schooling. I'm not going to, but depending on what you want your path to be, depending on where you want to end up in the industry, you can get great employment with the degree that you're getting right now. But that might not be the employment that you want long term. That might not be the growth pattern you want long term. Maybe you really want to get embedded in the building science consulting industry. Maybe you really want to get embedded in the technical side of an architecture firm, or a big or small contractor, or a developer. Like, these are the places that all our students end up. I would say these days, and I think Marianne would agree with me, if you come through a college or university and there's not many quote unquote programs in building science, well, none, there's some other related ones, you can get good employment. But if you're going to push further into the field, you probably want to look at going to a grad school program in building science, like at U of T, like at TMU, and some other places as well. Carleton has options as well. I would say that's something that you don't have to do right away. It depends on the individual. We've all met students that come out of an undergrad degree in college, university, and be like, nope, yep, I want to do a master's. It's like, okay, great. If you want to do building science, we can help you with that, all of us. Other people want to work for a while to understand where their passion is and where they want to end up, and then come back. Maybe they want to go into a 3-year MR because you want to become an architect. Maybe you want to do a master's degree in building science related stuff, and you go into that sort of program. So, and we have people that come back after 10, 12 years. And we have people that come into the industry after 10, 12 years, like doing geology for 10, 12 years in the oil fields in Alberta. And I always joke that they just want to repent their sins, but they find building science and they usually have to go to a grad program because they don't want to do a 4-year undergrad program. So it really depends. Depends on the job you find. Depends on your long-term goals. But there are options. And anytime you could talk to any of us, get our opinion at any time in your career. The talk to us at any time ticket doesn't expire after you leave your college or undergrad program. So you can just reach out to us.
So true. Thank you very much, Ross, for your opinions.
No problem.
Opinions.
Yeah,
I hope that helped. No problem.
I guess anybody else have anything to put you on the phone? I was also wondering, I guess, about the price of the exams. Now, I guess that would kind of equal out if you started working and you passed all the exams, you started working, and I mean that cost would easily be covered, you know. It's always a hard question to be like, oh, what's the salary like? But in these days, it's kind of an important question as well.
Sorry, I'm not sure. Like you're wondering about starting salaries?
Yeah, like I was just looking at the exams and the prices and wondering, you know, if the salary increase becoming building science specialist kind of equals out once you
Oh, I
get.
see. Yeah. Yeah, you know what? We don't have good data on that, I'll be honest. But I think it's more about shifting into an area that you are interested in and getting that background knowledge in building science to be able to pursue a career in that realm. I'll be honest, I'm in academia. I send students out into the world, but I don't know as much about yeah, the salary side of things. But I would also encourage you, I think there was a question about this earlier, that if you are already working in the space or you're interested in working in the space, I think this is definitely a conversation to have with your employer, if they can support you in getting that designation, because I think it's in the employer's best interest as well, to make sure that you're trained in all of these areas, that you are getting continuing education. So I think if that's something that you're worried about, that's an alternative path that you can take. Russ, feel free to jump in if you have any thoughts on any of this stuff because you do a lot more industry work than I do. So.
Yeah, Marianne's right. We don't really have data on a salary jump with BSS. I can tell you that with an accredited college undergraduate degree and then going into a master's program that focuses on building science, generally right now starting salaries are 55.60 to 75.80 depending on the firm and the part of the industry you hit. I can also tell you that Marianne and I and others on the BSS board are working on an accreditation process for undergraduate degrees, both in university and college, that we are doing a initial test pilot, but in the next couple of years, we would probably have a number of degrees at the grad level and undergrad level that would give you equivalency for the exams or some of the exams. I say this because depending on where you are in your career, you may be making the choice to go into another program, like a grad program, and you can kind of get, have your cake and eat it too, so to speak. You can get your master's and you can choose a program that can satisfy the BSS so you won't have to pay for the exams. Ta-da! So there's some savings that way. It's not rolled out yet, but depending on where you guys are, I think the timing would work such that, if you chose one of the programs that are likely going to go that path, and we kind of have an idea after this pilot where we want to focus. So we could probably off the record talk to you about that another time. You won't have to pay for the exams. You'd have to still get the experience portion, but the idea is that you've paid for the school, and the school pretty much is the same as the exams, arguably better or worse. I'd say better as a prof in one of these programs. And yeah, you get that part. So eventually there are going to be other paths that circumvent the exams, and you get a 2-for-1 when you go into those programs. And maybe not all the exams, maybe 2 of 4, 3 of 4. But there's definitely cost savings with that. So I know it's not the perfect answer because we can't relate BSS to salary jump, but hopefully gave you enough to sort of chew on.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Another question I had, and sort of more inside, I guess.
All right, it's a little difficult to hear in the room. I wonder if you could get a little bit closer to the mic.
Give me a second. Is that better?
Yeah, I'll turn my on.
Perfect. So I just wanted to ask a little bit into the workings of the BSS as an organization. When we look at sort of board members and, I'm seeing profs, is it more based in academia and experts within that? Or is there also incorporations of like people who are working within the industry and are just part of this association because they want to expand it into students and just the the construction industry as a whole?
Yeah, that's a great question. You dropped out a little bit at the end, but I think you're asking about the composition of the board and the organization. So
Yes.
we have both academic members and industry members, and the idea is to try to keep that board fairly balanced. So we have the academic members on side to basically, develop and review things like the learning outcomes and the exams. We're kind of used to that part of the job, so that's a little bit more in our wheelhouse. But then whenever we undergo changes in the learning outcomes, we did a revision, I think 2 years ago or so. We actually have the industry folks review that as well. And then I think we actually struck an external review committee as well, just inviting people to join, because we really want to make sure that what is in the exams reflects the needs in the industry. And so we're very cognizant that this is not entirely an academic exercise. We want to make sure it's also practical.
Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions. I'm on the website of the association, the Building Science Association of Ontario. So you're saying it was a spin-off?
Correct.
Yours is a spin-off of the. Why did it need to be spun off?
Well, we were trying to increase accessibility to this program, and because it was part of a provincial organization, it was really limited to folks in Ontario. And so when we tried to sort of expand the designation beyond Ontario, we formed a national organization. And so that's why the BSSB, the Building Science Specialist Board of Canada, now exists.
Okay.
And so while we don't have huge uptake, we do have people writing exams in other provinces now. And that is starting to snowball a little bit, which we're just so delighted to see.
Right.
And we're still, we actively reach out to the other BECs and are actively trying to promote this designation.
It's as a teacher at Algonquin or at a college, to me, it's really frustrating that technologists should be building science experts. We shouldn't have to go and do this extra step, right? Because if you're learning about construction, you're learning a little bit about design as a technologist, this should be kind of this should be in building science should be what we're learning. We shouldn't have to go and do a separate, get a separate designation or take a separate course. And it's really frustrating. It's kind of, for me anyway, I find it kind of frustrating that we're not doing that, because we are building scientists, right? What we're doing is, there's a reason why we put, the forms of construction, there's a reason why we do certain things, and that's all building science.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I think there's two pathways here. First of all, as Russ mentioned, we are in the process of doing this pilot for accrediting a particular program. We're just working with one institution right now to kind of get the process sorted. But if that goes well, then we will be approaching other organizations, including Algonquin College, to figure out, okay, what of your existing courses, or is there a combination of courses that you could take to kind of tick that box on one or more of the exams?
Yeah.
And so that's going to be, this is, as maybe you'll gather from my history slide, this has been kind of a long evolution, and I think we're kind of getting to where we need to go. We've got the exams in place. We're trying to get the resources to allow for self-study. We've got the courses identified, and now it's a matter of accrediting those various programs. So we are working on it. And so we definitely hear you, and we don't want people to be, having to do the same thing twice. But there is this process of quality assurance that we need to go through to make sure that these courses are in fact equivalent to the exam. So if you'll bear with us on that, hopefully that won't be an issue for too long. But then, one thing you can do right now, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, is to start to have a look through the learning outcomes for the various exams and have a look at how those map to the existing courses that are taught at Algonquin College, because that's essentially what we're going to ask you to do for the accreditation process, is to map course content and assessments to the various learning outcomes. So that would be a great exercise for you just to have some visibility to, okay, well, what courses would translate to one or more exams?
The last point you added, it's exactly what it should be. When we are looking into the objective outcomes needed for the BSS, the courses in mechanical and the mechanical equipment system and heat gain loss calculation, we do some of those, but I feel the BSS needs a little bit more in-depth calculations for to be able to get that designation. In architectural technology, we do a lot of building envelope for drafting purposes to create the proper detail for the flashing, to how to get rid of the moisture from the envelope and so on. But the mechanical system should, as far as I know, it needs to be reinforced a little bit to have more thorough and in-depth calculation for the mechanical systems.
Yeah, and just to, I think Russ mentioned this before, but it's not kind of an all or none thing. There might be one or two courses that you can use to offset a particular exam.
Yes.
So you don't necessarily have to have a program that covers all the content from all 4 exams too. It's quite, we're imagining it being quite modular.
That's so true. Yeah. Very good question, Greg. It's very well worth it. Any other questions among the participants online or in person? If there is no questions, I would like to invite Ross and Marianne, both. If you have any final words for this presentation tonight, please feel free to take the floor. And then after that, we are going to wrap the session up.
All right, thanks. Well, I just wanted to thank everyone for attending. We really appreciate your interest in the program. And I'd say definitely keep in touch with us. There's tons of information on the website. So make sure if this is something you're interested in, please have a look. Please get in touch with us, as Russ offered as well. We're happy to chat with you about, you know, career planning and planning your courses and things like that. We're always here for a chat. Russ, did you want to add anything?
No, you said it well. Don't be a stranger. You can always look us up. Just might be easier to put in the subject matter that you were on the, you know, the BSS call with Algonquin College.
Sure.
Just it grabs our eyes quicker. That's about it.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, Ross. Thank you very much, Marianne. It was a very valuable session. If anybody has any final words, please open up your microphone, say it. If not, we are going to close the session.
Just wanted to thank everybody for coming, and it was a great informative session. I feel that we learned a lot here, at least in the classroom. And yeah, I look forward to the next time.
Wonderful, thanks.
Thank you, Jamie. Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. Good night, everyone. Thank you very much again, and enjoy the rest of your night.
Thanks. Take care. Nice to see everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.